This is Asus Rog Raikiri Pro, a premium gamepad for PC and Xbox with an OLED display. It not only looks stylish, but also has without doubt the best sticks of all gamepads I've ever tested. But to be honest, it also has drawbacks. And in this video I will tell you all about them. You will learn about its latency, I will compare it to the Xbox Series controller, show you what's inside, let you hear how it sounds, show you what its software looks like, why it needs a display, and check what devices it works with, as well as test its sticks, D-pad and triggers. Hello everyone, I'm Unpacking and this is my detailed review of the Asus Rog Raikiri Pro. The gamepad comes in a fairly high-quality box with an additional Xbox logo that hints at the comparability of the device with the console. On the back, the main advantages are listed with a separate section on the display. Inside, we are greeted by an additional hard box in which the device is securely packed. In addition to it, there is a manual. There is also a USB cable over 3 meters long. In addition, a receiver is hidden in the middle of the gamepad, which allows you to connect it via 2 and 4 Hz channel with minimal delay. By the way, Raikiri Pro weighs 256 grams. Externally, Raikiri is an Xbox-like gamepad with an OLED display on the front side. The texture of the gamepad handles has small dots that provide a better grip. On the reverse side add additional programmable buttons, triggers, mode switches, and the receiver compartment. The headset output is traditionally located on the bottom left, and on the right is the microphone mute button, which is a pair button for compatibility. On the upper side there is a Type-C port and buttons for controlling the internal display menu. In general, the gamepad is comfortable in the hands, just like the Xbox controller, and in this regard they are very similar. The only thing I personally have complaints about is the location of the additional buttons. They are quite far away from the usual grip of fingers, which on the one hand guarantees the absence of accidental presses, and on the other hand makes you constantly reach for them. However, it's probably a matter of habit. The most important feature of Raikiri Pro, according to Asus, is the OLED display, which is present here not only to show various animations, but also as an informative display that shows you what mode you are currently connected in and how much battery is left. You can also use the individual control buttons to access the settings menu, where you can select the desired connection type, change the settings profile or screensaver. Personally, I like the fact that I don't have to memorize the keyboard shortcuts required to connect the gamepad in different modes. It's enough to double-click on the button and select the appropriate connection type. There is also an animation that informs you that the connection is established, which is a nice feature. The drawbacks are not very convenient controls and the fact that the display is monochrome. Like any modern gamepad, Raikiri Pro has its own software that allows you to update the firmware and customize its profiles. You can control the dead zones of triggers and sticks. In addition, in the settings of sticks, you can choose a response curve, making the speed of movement from the center to the edge non-linear. This will be useful, for example, for snipers who want to make a micro-movement of the sticks less sensitive. It's also possible to customize additional buttons on the gamepad. You can either assign existing buttons to them or set a quick change of stick sensitivity. And the last tab of the settings allows you to change the degree of vibration of all 4 gamepad motors separately, including triggers. The Lightning tab allows you to change or completely turn off the gamepad's lighting. The Power tab allows you to see the battery level and turn on a light alert when it drops to the level you choose. A separate firmware update tab allows you to check and install the latest firmware on both the gamepad and the receiver. And the last tab, OLED, allows you to change the animation of the gamepad screen, not only to the existing one from the list, but also to your own. You can either enter plain text or upload a file in GIF or JPEG format. Among the drawbacks, I can note that the replacement of animations is not instant, and if you change change, for example, all 4 available images at once, it will take a couple of minutes for them to be loaded into the gamepad's memory. But compared to the time it took to install Armory Crate, it's nothing. As the program install took me more than 20 minutes. And then for another 10 minutes it was constantly downloading something and updating. It's also disappointing that in order to set up the gamepad, it needs to be connected exclusively via cable, because unfortunately, even through the proprietary receiver, it's impossible to update or change profiles. Unlike the Xbox controller, the Raikiri Pro has more limited list of devices to which it can be connected. I tested it on various devices and the results are as follows. Via receiver, Raikiri Pro works exclusively with Windows. Neither Linux nor iOS nor my MacBook will work via the receiver with a gamepad. Via Bluetooth, the gamepad connects to Windows, Linux, Android and my Steam Deck without any problems. But unfortunately, Apple devices are still not included in this list. All that's left is the cable. Via cable, Raikiri Pro works with Windows and, what is equally important, with Xbox consoles, as the stickers on the Xbox seems to hint. But to my surprise, the list of devices with which the gamepad works via cable ends here. In other words, the wired mode is only for Windows and Xbox. All other systems will not work via cable. That means macOS is out of the question here. This makes the Raikiri even less universal than a regular Xbox controller, which works via cable with both macOS and Linux. The internal dead zone of the sticks is configured in such a way as to completely exclude accidental and unauthorized drifting, which is the same as the Xbox controller. I mean, in fact, it's present, but its size is very small. The external dead zone is average, a bit larger than the Xbox controller, but still significant enough to affect the range of useful movement. The resolution of the stick is 0 and 012, which allows you to register 83 positions from the center to the edge. This is not a record, but it's more than enough for a comfortable game. There are no axis bindings at all. The stick moves freely in all planes and does not stick anywhere. The position registration is clear and without tremors. The pointer moves smoothly and does not jump anywhere. The center point position is perfectly calibrated and always returns the pointer to the exact center of the axis. This is something that, for example, an Xbox controller cannot boost off. The shape of the circle is perfect, with only 1 and 4% error. Checkmate Xbox controller with its 20% error rate. Raikiri Pro sticks are generally excellent. The internal dead zone is present here solely to compensate for the drift of the center position and does not affect anything else. In addition, when moving from the center to any side, the sticks have the same travel and sensitivity. And no matter how hard I try, they don't fall over in any direction. So this is not only programmatically perfect centering, but also physically. For comparison, here is how 8-bit Do Pro 2 stick behaves when it's pressed down and let go. As you can see, the stick did not return completely, and as a rule, most gamepads have this problem in one direction. And here is how Raikiri behaves in the same situation, and this is in all directions. So I'm not exaggerating when I say that the sticks here are perfect. Yes, the stickers here are not based on Hall sensors. They are classic potentiometers, polished to the perfection by the developer, as the behavior of both the left and the right sticks is the same. Raikiri's triggers are analog, and there is a slight pre-travel at the beginning of the movement, but it's not much larger than that of the Xbox Series controller, so it does not affect the usable range. As for the range, it's the same as a Series. The only difference is that the final press is soft and almost completely silent. Post-travel is also not significant, and in general the triggers feel great. The only thing I didn't like was the short travel mode. There is no click as such, and instead we get the sound of hitting the plastic, which feels somehow imperfect. The D-pad of Raikiri Pro has a fairly quiet click sound compared to the Xbox Series controller, and the clicks feels quite confident. But it's difficult to make wiggle movement. Sometimes it may seem that you are pressing down and right at the same time. But in fact, only the down button or the right button is active. And even if you press the button very hard, you have to balance all the time, so the D-pad does not tilt a center direction. It's interesting to note that this problem is only pronounced in the down and right direction, while it's absent in all other directions. Therefore, I don't exclude the possibility that this may be due to the quality of the assembly. To test the gamepad's latency, I decided to disassemble it. As with the Xbox Series, the first step is to remove the two side panels. You can do this with any flat tool or credit card. The latches on the panels are fairly high quality, so if you do everything right, you won't break it. Next, you need to unscrew the 4 Phillips screws located at the corners of the gamepad. And finally, you need to pry the lower end of the case with something flat. The first thing that catches your eye is traces of unwashed flags and some strange round stickers, one of which for some reason stuck to the button. I decided that it didn't belong here, since the button on the right didn't have one, so I removed it. Speaking of my nitpicking about the washed flags, someone recently told me that some types of modern flags are chemically inactive and can be left unwashed. I hope this is one of those, because it doesn't look good. The next thing I didn't like was the crookedly attached cable, which didn't affect the operation of the buttons, but I decided to reconnect it. I also didn't like the way the wiring was organized. For example, on the right side, the cable of the trigger's vibration motor is very stretched, as it is wired into the connector of the lower motor. On the left, the wiring is different, and there is no such problem, so I decided to fix it. From the positive aspects, I note that the cables are on connectors, so it can be disassembled without a soldering iron. Another plus to the assembly is the protection against fraying of wires in critical places, in the form of small pieces of Jeva. However, in general, as for me, the assembly looks very messy, and the design is complicated. The internal design looks more like a prototype than a finished product. I'm going to stop disassembling it here, because I've already reached the button contacts to which the tester can be connected. I will be testing the gamepad's latency using the Arduino-based GPDL tester, which I soldered to the internal button's contact. I described the principle of its operation in a separate video, but in short, it presses the button, and a special program on the PC calculates the latency. I measured the Bluetooth cable and receiver delays, and here are the results. Via Bluetooth, the average latency of both gamepads is around 11 milliseconds, with the maximum latency not exceeding 20 milliseconds. On the receiver, the delays are also not very different. Raikiri 7 milliseconds and Xbox controller 6 and 5 milliseconds. But Raikiri's maximum latency is 3 milliseconds lower, which is definitely a plus. And the delays over the cable are not very different either. Both gamepads have an average latency of 6 milliseconds. However, Raikiri has a smaller spread in the same range. I will leave a link to this comparison of gamepad latency in the description below the video. But during the test, I noticed an interesting feature of Raikiri. If you connect it to the receiver immediately after it has been connected via cable, the receiver starts working at a higher ping rate, and accordingly the gamepad latency becomes lower. This can be seen in a separate ping rate test, which usually shows 125 Hz when the stick is moving in a receiver mode. But after connection via cable, this figure increases to 250 until you turn off the gamepad. Of course, this is more a bug than a feature, but it's nice. And its presence only confirms that the developer can overlock this controller if he wished. But don't forget that a high polling rate quickly drains the battery, so it's more a matter of balance. In general, Raikiri's latency is low enough to play both with Bluetooth and receiver, so you won't have any problems with input lag with this gamepad. To summarize, I want to go through all benefits and drawbacks of the device once again. Among the drawbacks, Raikiri has a limited list of compatible devices, so you should buy it only for playing on a PC. Of course, since it's an Xbox-like controller, it doesn't have a gyroscope. The gamepad software is heavy and slow. It also has no options for writing macros at all. Raikiri works with the console only via cable, and you can also set it up on a PC only via cable. In addition, it has some nuances with pressing the D-pad sideways, at least at my device. Also, this point is not critical for me, since I don't play the D-pad. Perhaps the problem is in the assembly quality, which I also didn't like. And the last thing is the sound of pressing the trigger in the short movement mode. It sounds more like the button is simply blocked. Benefits. Raikiri has a low input lag, almost the same as the Xbox controller, and unlike the second one, the proprietary receiver is already included and hides in the gamepad body, which is convenient. It has additional buttons that can be configured not only to duplicate other buttons, but also to change the sensitivity of the stick. Also, the sticks are not on the trendy Hall sensors. They are calibrated really perfectly. I would even say that I will remember this gamepad not for the display or design, but for the sticks. And without exaggeration, these are the best sticks I've ever seen. Other advantages include an improved sound card without headset noise with a separate mute button, and an OLED display that allows you to change settings and set your own animated images, but most importantly, shows the battery level. And a special plus for the battery, it works more than 40 hours with active lighting. And the last point is the price. At the time of the video release, Asus Rog Raikiri Pro costs $169. But this is without sales and discounts. It's up to you to decide whether this gamepad is worth it or not. My task was to show you what this gamepad is like. And yours is to like this video. Thank you for watching and see you soon.